welcome to Second Take, the show that takes a look at the issues behind the news. The 90-day pause on America's so-called reciprocal tariffs globally, including 30% on South African imports, has created some space for government to seek a trade deal. Terence Creamer joins me to discuss the approach being taken by South Africa. Hi, Terence.
Hi, Chanel.
Even before Trump's tariff flip-flop, South Africa had adopted a cautious stance.
Yes, I think we had. We've been quite pragmatic about the approach that we're going to take, quite diplomatic about the approach that we're also going to take. This in a context of quite a lot of hostility on the geopolitical level, on the political level, between the Trump administration since Donald Trump resumed the presidency earlier this year, and South Africa, with a number of issues being thrown out. I mean, we know the unhappiness that America has around the Expropriation Act, the fact that they've offered refugee status to Afrikaner farmers. They don't like our black empowerment policies. They've objected to our G20 theme, which they say conflicts with some of the main thrusts of the new administration. So we are on their radar, and we're on the back foot in some ways with this relationship with the US. So we when the reciprocal tariffs were mooted, we had a sort of wait and see approach to that. And when they were announced, we immediately said we're not going to take any immediate action. We think it would be counterproductive, and therefore we're going to keep our powder dry. And that's sort of the approach, the sort of sensitive approach that South Africa has adopted since with the threat of these tariffs.
What is the current status of the trade relationship with the US?
Well, the current status, even though we have a good market access to the US historically, that's sort of been nullified, or initially by the announcement that we were going to face a 30% reciprocal tariff, which wasn't actually a reciprocal tariff. The formula that the Trump administration used wasn't based on what we charge to import American products here, which is about 7.5% in duties average. It was based on our perceived trade surplus with the US, and trying to get that to a sort of zero level. They said in a generous way they'd only do half, and they therefore said we should be charging you 60% tariff, but we'll charge you 30%. The analysis that's since come out is that we actually don't have such a huge surplus as implied. Some of the analysis coming out of the UCT, for instance, one of the professors there is saying that, that calculation, one, it doesn't take into account trade in services. If you did that, America's got a massive trade surplus in their favor against South Africa, but it doesn't. It only looks at trade in goods. And even the goods assessment, they didn't take out some of the exempted products, that, the mineral products. You should have taken that out before you made your reciprocal tariff calculation. It doesn't take into account the tariffs that have been imposed on automotive components, 25% steel and aluminium exports from South Africa. That should have been removed. And it also included gold that they assumed was originated in South Africa, but it actually just processed at our refineries here, but originates in other African countries. And those all should have been excluded. If you take that, plus you would to add in our trade the surplus they have on services, we shouldn't have any reciprocal tariff. So that will be an argument that I think we will make. But as things stand, we have a 10% base tariff, as does the rest of the world except for China. We know they're facing 150 plus percent tariffs. China's put in retaliatory tariffs of over 80%. So we face a 10% base tariff plus those 25% tariffs on those industries that I mentioned, which is under a different section, Section 232 they call it. A tariff. It wasn't the emergency tariffs that they announced on the 2nd of April. So we don't have the access we used to have under AGOA, for instance, which is duty-free, tariff-free.
What does government plan to do in the coming months to create greater trade certainty?
Government still believes they can work out a deal with the Trump administration. They believe that the administration is highly transactional, and that they will be open to some sort of offer that in the South African parlance is mutually beneficial. We don't know what that's going to look like yet, but it's basically going to be a broad, all-encompassing offer. I think addressing some of the political concerns that the US has around South Africa, or at least trying to explain that. So that's the one level. But on the trade and investment front, definitely trying to re-engage with the United States. Things had become quite flat in terms of we had ongoing discussions for many, many years with the US. Things have flattened out. They're trying to revive that and using this pause period, I suppose, to try and before the 90 days are up and before the 30 or 31% gets reimposed, try have some sort of engagement. But where we are in the pecking order is going to be interesting because we hear from the Trump administrations over 70 countries are wanting to approach the US with a trade deal. How much capacity they can have to run multiple trade negotiations simultaneously is going to be interesting. But everyone's wanting to find some sort of deal because the pain associated with 30% on our products, especially for certain industries, and the 25% automotive tariffs are seriously deleterious for the South African economy. But I suppose the flip-flop shows that there's a waking up to how painful they would have been as well for the US economy.
Is there any hope of the AGOA benefits being sustained?
I think that there's still some hope that we can try and convince the US that AGOA is in their interest as well as Africa's interest. There's a trade meeting of African ministers next week where they're going to obviously make that case. But I think that for South Africa, that door is closed. I think there is already a view that we should have been graduated out of AGOA. So I don't think already it's nullified by the 10% tariffs and the 25% on certain products. So I think that we're going to have to find some other relationship with the US. I don't think AGOA is going to be sustained. Officially, it's still there till September when Congress will vote. This is not an administration decision. This is a congressional decision. But all the signs are is that that AGOA is no longer going to be available to South Africa.
What are some of the persistent risks despite the pause?
Yeah, the fight, the trade war between China and the US has implications for everyone, including South Africa. These are our two most important trading partners, China massively so, America less so. Obviously Europe as a bloc is also very big, but these are very important trading partners. They are fighting with each other. Chinese products face massive tariffs going into the US. They have they'll have a surplus of product seeking new markets. I think Africa is going to be a playground for those, or a potential home for a lot of those products. That's where we're wanting to grow under the African Continental Free Trade Agreement. We wanted to grow our trade there, but we could face really stiff competition from Chinese, possibly even American products in these markets. So I think that's going to be a huge competitive pressure. Then in our own case, where we have sustained fairly low average tariffs overall, except for in certain sectors, we also are an open economy. There's going to be too many goods chasing too few markets. We're one of the markets that those goods could flow into. Obviously, consumers would benefit from lower prices, but our industries could really face existential threat if these products just come in. So I think we're going to see quite a few more trade protection applications going into RTEC in the next few months. I think safeguard measures is one of already there's quite a few around steel that are coming in, and there's also the big steel tariff review. But I think it's going to be more broad-based than that, where people are going to say products being dumped, we need a safeguard or we need an anti-dumping tariff. Whether we are alive and our processes are quick enough, and our processes take very, very long to do a tariff adjudication, to put in a safeguard. By the time, if we take as long as we have historically, by the time we get those safeguards in place, those industries and businesses would have closed. So we have to realize we're in a different world. We have to be much more flexible, much more nimble, not just focus on our trade relationship bilaterals with the US. That's important, and also looking for new markets, and Africa being a key one, but others, Middle East and Asia being other key ones. We also need to realize that our industries will face threat during this period, and we'll need to potentially respond, and we will have to respond quickly. We can't use our old, very cumbersome processes that we've used in the past.
Thank you. That's the Second Take show for this week. Thank you for watching, and join us again next time for more news analysis. Also, don't forget to listen to the audio version of our Engineering News daily email newsletter.